everyone. Thank you so much for coming back, or coming to, maybe for the first time, my YouTube channel, Scarlett Roams the Globe. I am Fran Scarlett. I am an avid solo traveler, a part-time digital nomad, and I am here to share my tips, tricks, and hacks about solo travel. Today I'd like to talk about safety. Safety is probably the number one reason I hear women say that they don't solo travel. Am I going to be safe? I hear them say that about the US as well as international. My focus is going to be on international solo travel and safety as it relates to that, but most of these tips could be used here in the US as well. All right, so let's dive in. So I know people use a lot of gadgets. I've heard of people using door stops and door alarms, which is cool. I have never used them, so I really can't speak to those. What I can speak to is using the tools within the hotel or accommodation that I'm staying. Usually in the hotels I stay in, there's some sort of door jam that would prevent the door from being opened. I use the double lock. I also I usually spend a good chunk of my budget on my accommodations because I believe I should have the best quality accommodations possible for a lot of reasons, but safety is definitely one of them. And it doesn't have to be that the place is expensive. It can be Airbnb, it can be a guest house, it can be a traditional hotel room. Just make sure that it's a place you feel comfortable staying. So common sense is sort of the theme for this particular safety talk that I'm going to do today. All right, another big asset is a money belt, something that has RFID protection, something where you can put your passport, copies of different documents, money, your credit cards, and so on, and make sure it has a slash-proof strap. I tend to wear mine under my clothes for protection. I don't want it sitting out, but once in a blue moon I will wear it outside over my clothes. But that slash-proof strap is pretty handy for that particular purpose. Okay, I'm gonna check my notes, y'all, as I'm doing this because I want to make sure I get everything in. So I'll say just forgive me in advance if I look down. All right, when it comes to eating out, especially the evening meal, dinner, I tend to sit at the bar. I find that it's less conspicuous. It's kind of obvious when you're sitting by yourself in a restaurant at a table that you're alone. I don't find it as obvious when you're sitting at the bar. It's also a good place to engage in conversation with people. Just be very mindful of drinking and keeping your drink safe. That's a place of high vulnerability is when you're drinking. It makes you more vulnerable to being less on guard, less on your toes, and so on and so forth. Maybe sharing information you probably may not want to. You wouldn't do if you weren't drinking. So just be aware of that. Speaking of being out and about and in social situations, come up with a phrase that a go-to phrase that you can say if people ask you, are you solo? Are you here by yourself? Are you traveling by yourself? That's something I get all the time. I don't particularly feel the need to tell people that I'm not traveling solo, but if you're feeling sensitive about that, I know people say things like, oh no, I'm meeting my friend who's going to be here in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever works for you. Or, oh no, my partner's up in the room, they're, taking a nap. Whatever you want to say that makes you feel comfortable, but have it ready. Sort of think about it ahead of time so that it's not like something you're hemming and hawing to come up with in the moment, if that makes sense. Be aware of local customs as it relates to dress in particular, because dress is a signal in many cultures of like your appearance, your attire, especially in conservative countries, religious countries, where how you're dressed is a signal of modesty and respect. If you dress like I had a situation when I was in Marrakesh, Morocco, very devout Muslim country, and this young lady was basically wearing almost nothing. And I could see how agitated people were, both the women and the men, and I just thought, wow, like, did you not check the customs of this country? And it's almost like such a huge disrespect to the locals when you don't sort of adhere to sort of their rules. And people might have feelings about that. So it's just something to not bring attention to you is to know what the customs are around dress in a particular country, especially when it's a conservative, religiously conservative country. If you're a U.S. Citizen or resident, register with the State Department. They have a program called STEP, and it is a program that allows you to sort of tell them where you're going to be, what city, in what country, and it gives you information about the embassy in that place or what your closest U.S. embassy is. The first time I registered for that was when I was in South Africa, and I was in Cape Town, and the pandemic got declared while I was there, and I learned that we were in a pandemic from the State Department email telling me that this was declared, here's what the country rules are, here's when you need to leave. I found that very helpful. No, that's not tactical like, oh, I lost my credit card level, but it was important for sort of a big picture sense of what was happening in the country at a particular time. I would recommend that you make several copies of your passport and leave them in different places in your luggage. Leave one in your safe within your room, and leave your passport too. Yes, you're supposed to travel with your passport, but I find 99% of the time a copy of my passport is just as all I need to have for whatever reason. Entrance into something, proving that I'm a guest in that country, and so on and so forth. The reason I do that is I don't want to have my passport on me on a boat ride. What if something happens and it falls in the water, or I lose, something? I just don't want to risk that. So I like to carry a copy. And like I said, 99% of the time, it's more than enough. The only time I have had it not work is when I was trying to get a SIM card not at the airport, but in the city of Hanoi, Vietnam. They needed the hard copy. The paper copy wasn't enough for them. But most of the time it works. Learn a couple of phrases of the language of the country you're going to be in. People feel much more comfortable when you make an attempt, and it's, always have some level of the language available to you, or use Google Translate, download the app in the language that you're going into offline, so you can access it offline, because you don't always have internet access. So I highly recommend doing that particular thing. Also, write down the name of the place that you're staying in the language, so that if you need to give it to someone to say, I'm trying to get to this place, you have it in the language. You're not going to assume that they know how to read or read English. Okay, so that's another tip. Always have that written down. And lastly, tell someone where you're going, whether that's someone at home that you left your itinerary with. Maybe that's too much detail to write on the itinerary, but let someone know. Send a text, send an email. Hey, I'm heading out to this restaurant, to this jazz club. Then I'm going over here. I'll check in with you tomorrow. Check in with folks every so often. Check in, like have folks do a wellness check to see. Every 2 days I have my friends and family give me a call, or I call them. If they don't hear from me in 2 days, they know to call me, and then whatever, right? They know how to activate, but have some kind of cadence of check-in, just so people know where you are, and someone's knows where you are. And you can also do that on the local level, maybe at your hotel, if that's something you feel comfortable with, definitely with someone at home. All right, so those are my tips. If you have other tips that you'd like to add, please put them in the comments, so we can incorporate those for others. And let's get to solo traveling. Take care. See you next time.